You're listening to the Intentional Minds podcast. This is a space where we share conversations that spark growth. I'm your host, Divine Marizu, and you're welcome. Welcome to episode 3 of the Intentional Minds podcast. Today, we are tackling a very important subject, and that is communication. And honestly, I couldn't have a better guest to discuss this with than Dasha Bly. Dasha is a communication coach who's traveled the world, starting her career in tech and moving from Ukraine to the US. In this episode, we explore what it really means to have effective communication. We dive into how to overcome filler words, why we even use them in the first place, and how to beat the fear that comes with presentations and public speaking. We also talk about using communication as a tool to handle disputes, whether it's between a child and a parent or between partners. Plus, we get into strategies for managing anxiety and so many other skills that will help you level up your communication game. Trust me, this is a conversation you don't want to miss. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. Hi, Dasha. Welcome to the Intentional Minds podcast. How are you doing today?
Hi, Divine. I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me here.
Amazing. Same here. There's so much we have to uncover. That's because your story and journey, it's one that there's so much to be learned from. For our guests who are listening, I want to get to know you. Could you please give us a brief overview or introduction as to who you are and the work you do?
Of course, happy to do so. I'm Dasha Bly. I'm communication coach lately, but my career started from Ukraine when I moved to US 10 years ago, but prior to that, I worked primarily in tech. And for the longest time, I saw people who have so many ideas, who generate so many valuable thoughts, but they actually afraid to speak up. And I genuinely wanted to help people to get out of their comfort zone, to be able to get themselves out there and express what they wanted to say because their opinions are so valuable. They have so many interesting things that could change the processes. And this is why I actually started learning myself about the communication and wanted to share about what I learned with my audience and start teaching it. People
That,
who actually willing to
that's
take the
beautiful.
information. Yes.
That's beautiful. Like your videos, anyone who's listening should check out her page. She gives really good information when it comes to communication. And you mentioned that you moved from Ukraine to the US about 10 years ago. That's interesting because, for one, I noticed that English is not your first language, it's not your second language, even. It's like your third
No.
language, right? And you have such a
Yes, it's
strong
true.
command of the English language. I have so many questions to ask on that. But let's start with your journey moving from like Ukraine to the US. What kind of like prompted that move? And what are some, would I say, culture shocks, or like just walk us through what that moment was like for you?
I moved to United States for work. I had a H-1B visa and the company here brought me to do the project management work in the United States.
Yeah.
I thought that I will move temporarily, that it will be more adventurous. I will be able to travel and explore this part of the world, but at the end of the day, I stayed because I liked it here. And the interesting part, when I moved to United States, my English level was actually, I would say, intermediate advanced. I knew
Wow.
a lot of stuff that I needed to communicate in a work environment, but I didn't
Yeah.
have a vocabulary to communicate outside of it. I didn't know the slang. I didn't understand many accents, and it was a big challenge. So
Yeah.
for me to overcome that, I set the goal. I decided that I will interact primarily with the English speakers only. So all my friends and all my circles were English speakers, native
Wow.
speakers. I specifically didn't go to Ukrainian or Russian communities to find friends there because I knew that if I will get into that comfort zone, I will not be able to learn and adapt fast enough. And then I will get stuck there. And
Yeah.
moving on, I will not learn English as much as I would want to. So
Wow.
this is what helped me actually to progress. And this is the advice that I give to a lot of my friends who moved here or people that I'm meeting, that this is
Yeah.
the easiest way, but I understand that it's a really hard way because you are going through so much change, new culture, new environment, apartment, everything. You need to get so
Yeah.
many new things and you want to get as much help as possible. And then if you need to throw there the stress of learning the language and understanding an accent, and you're like, oh no, I will just pick an easier route. But in the long term,
Yeah.
it pays off, I promise you.
Amazing. Amazing. And when you compare English to what other two languages do you know? Just for
My
context.
first is
Yeah.
Russian, just because I grew up in the eastern part of Ukraine and we speak
Okay.
Russian more than Ukrainian. So Ukrainian will be second, but I am
Yeah.
fluent in both because we know both languages from the childhood. And English is the third one.
Oh, amazing, amazing. Now, speaking on English now for a second, this is something that have almost struggled with, and that's like an accent when you're speaking or interactive with like native English speakers. And most when it comes to like pronunciation of certain words, at certain times, like I had this weird interaction sometime during a meeting, and I think the guy was like in Ireland or an European country, and I was interacting with him, and he just couldn't understand what I was saying was like, please say it one more time. Please say it one more time. And I was just like, oh my God. Other people when they come and laughing because they could understand me. But there's always this barrier when it comes to like pronouncing certain words so that people can understand you. Still in the same language. What strategies or techniques would you say helped you to be able to like have a better pronunciation to communicate with like native English speakers?
English is the really articulative language.
Hmm.
So when you speak English and you want to sound more clear, you actually need to simply open your mouth more
Ah.
and try to articulate everything. It sounds unnatural, but it's not that bad. It will not look bad. So you can just slow down and actually say every word, really opening your mouth a little bit more. And this will help to generate sound better and it will come out cleaner and stronger. If you feel not comfortable to do the speaking, try to read. And you would read
Hmm.
slow and open your mouth every single time, a little bit wider, and try to really move your mouth and articulate kind of cleaner when you read. And the best part, kids' books. This is the best
Ooh.
way to practice English. If you have kids and you are able to read to them,
Yeah.
this is the best. I have a really funny story. I
Yeah,
remember
share it.
I was reading a book to my friend's child who was native
Yeah.
English speaker. He didn't understand any Russian, Ukrainian, whatever.
Yeah.
And I was reading a book about caterpillar, and I couldn't pronounce that word. I'm like, like, what is that thing? What is this? And I like caterpillar. Why somebody would even create a word like that? Oh my God. And 4 year old child was correcting me every single time I was trying to read her book. It was embarrassing, but it was fun. And this is when I understood that, yeah, maybe kids' book are not that, trivial.
Yeah. Absolutely. Most especially words that have like multiple syllables. No, it's really interesting. And thanks for sharing that. Chair for sharing that. It's really relatable. And then something that comes to mind when it comes to communication, if you notice, is the use of like filler words. I'm sure I've used certain filler words during our communication because as people are trying to learn to become better communicators, there's always this So I noticed during the past episode I used the words like, genuinely speaking, right? Why do people use filler words? Let's start from there. And then we can then talk about how to like overcome filler words.
People use filler words because our mind, moving way faster than our mouse.
Hmm.
Especially for a non-English speaker, the connection
Hmm.
between mouth and the mind is way slower because we need to actually go through the double translation. So
Hmm.
some people they think in their native language first and they naturally need to translate it into English and we have this little disconnect in a speed. And
Yeah.
once you are trying to look for the word or translate in your head, you naturally say or you fill it with something because the pause feels too uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Even for native speakers, why they're using filler words because they just think way faster than their mouth is moving. Maybe because they are
Oh.
not used to doing the presentations or talk faster, whatever it is. This is the main reason why we are using filler words naturally.
That's interesting. Very insightful. So I think it's a positive that our minds are working faster than we're able to articulate those words. But then
Yeah.
it can feel so discouraging most times when you're doing a presentation or you're having a communication with someone and you're always like, right, like we want to reduce that. Are there techniques that can help one to reduce or stop the use of filler words and better communicate more effectively?
I will give you a few techniques that I
Okay.
actually like and use and
Okay.
recommend to a lot of people. So, first and the easiest one is to replace your filler word with a pause.
Hmm.
If you will record yourself or actually reflect on your recording, where you are using a pause in a sentence, when you speak, this pauses feel so long and it feels so awkward. But in the reality,
Yeah.
when you listen to the recording later, this pause was nothing. It was barely a second, maybe less. And you're like, okay, it sounded fine. So when you replace a filler word with a pause, it sounds
Yeah.
cleaner and it actually helps your audience to reflect on what you just said because you are pausing in between. Now,
Hmm.
this is really easy way. And the main thing when you're working on the filler words and replacing them with pause or just trying to remove it from
Yeah.
your speech, the first step is of course acknowledging them and trying to think while you are speaking. So you
Yeah.
will just slowly but surely you will notice them more and you will be more cautious about replacing the filler word with a pause. And with the time and practice, it will get easier. I would definitely recommend to record and reflect on your recording on your past speech. That will help you to notice things better, understand how the progression is going, and what can you adjust next. And the second exercise, which I absolutely love, it helps with more than filler words. It helps with your storytelling. It helps you with
Hmm.
better reaction on unexpected question. You just go online,
Yeah.
Google the random word generator.
Okay.
It will create a word for you, and it can be anything. And for the next minute or two, you will need to tell a story around that word,
Wow.
whatever it is. And you will practice telling the story. You will practice to quickly react and generate some thoughts
Mm-hmm.
about that random word. And you will try to connect it, connect your mouth with your brain pretty fast. So it helps with a lot of aspects. It's really powerful exercise. If you will do it while you're driving or just while you're washing dishes and do this exercise a couple of times a day, you will see the progress really fast.
Amazing. Amazing. Can we quickly try that out now? So let's say I give you a random
Of
word,
course.
and can I see how you put this into action? So I'm going to think of. Let me use the word light because Everywhere around me now it's light. So the word I'll just give you one word, right? Light. All
Yes,
right.
light.
Light.
My husband and I, we recently moved to our new house. And this house was pretty renovated and new, and it actually has a lot of natural light that we are using a lot during our content creation, like recording the videos. This is what I love.
Hmm.
But another thing that was actually really difficult, in the houses, we have this yellow lights all the
Yeah.
time that is cozy and create this nice atmosphere. It's really not good for filming. For filming, you want this light, natural,
Yeah.
blue, white. My husband always call it as the doctor's office light. So our goal actually recently was to replace all the lights into new smart light that came out. That you can actually adjust not just the brightness of your light, but you can adjust the color around your whole house
Wow.
from yellow to
Wow.
pinkish to blue white light. This is one of the fun projects that we are having lately.
That was beautiful. It was not just the use of the word light, it was your storytelling ability and like relating it to what was going on around you and your life. That was so beautiful. Now, I'm going to consciously try this out. And I'm sure all our listeners on this podcast are going to find a way to properly like put this at the back of my mind. Thanks for recommending this. And you did this so
Of
beautifully
course.
well. Amazing. Now, one area I would love to talk about is public speaking, addressing a crowd. And this is something that I notice my friends always say that how can they like overcome this fear of like public speaking? And sometimes when they want to go on stage, there's this fear. So they start having palpitations and sometimes they find it hard to breathe. And I when I even did the research, like fear is of public speaking is one of like the top rated fears of humans in the world. And that was just so interesting that people some people might choose to even like fall sick or another bad thing than actually go and address people on stage. How can people overcome that? Right? That fear when it comes to going out to speak. And then we can then talk about more specific techniques of improving public speaking ability.
The main problem when it comes to public speaking is that people afraid to go on stage and fail. I think
Hmm.
this is the biggest fear that they face when they go on stage, that they will
Yeah.
forget their words, that they will say something embarrassing. And there are two aspects that helps a lot to overcome that. One, and this is so huge and powerful, is that realize that people don't think about you. Everybody is thinking about themselves.
Wow.
So let me ask you this. Do you remember the time when somebody on stage or on TV or in a personal interaction said something embarrassing? Do you remember?
No one comes
Do
to
you
mind.
remember last time when you said something that was embarrassing to you or you felt like uncomfortable, like, yeah, I wish I would said something else?
Yeah.
Exactly. So this is exactly what
Yeah.
happening with everybody. They think, "Oh my God, if will be embarrassing and I will have to live with it all my life." But in
Wow.
reality, even if you will say something wrong, we are all human, we'll make mistakes. But if you'll say something wrong, nobody will remember because they think about what they will eat for lunch, what is their plan for dinner, and they just will leave the presentation and they will move on with their life. At
Oh.
best, they come to this presentation to think, how much can I get out of this guy? How much value? I want to get as much value as possible. This is the best they think. And their brain is just trying to grasp and process what you're saying. They don't think about how you look, how is your hair, how are you
Wow.
walking, are you nervous? They just think about the value they will get because this is part of where they are thinking about themselves.
Yeah.
And they, even if you will say something out of line, it's fine. They will not remember. And when you understand that they will not remember that this is only in your head. You will lift that weight that is holding you back from speaking up. And another thing what is helps is just shifting your mindset and perspective that why are you doing this? When you come to stage, I come to serve. I come to
Hmm.
serve the audience and bring the value. I don't come there to look nice, to be good. I'm coming there to do the value. And once you think about how can you bring the most value to the audience, you focus on that and you really focus on the speech instead of worrying about saying something wrong.
Wow. You've just there's this like light bulb moment right here. You've just given to me. Honestly speaking. Because like you just don't it like so it's like you think that the spotlight is on you, that people are like thinking about you, but really you just pointed out that no, in reality they're more worried about themselves. And if they're worried about themselves, is that even if you make a mistake, they are gonna forget. So you don't have to beat yourself about it. That was just so mind blowing right now. And it means that if I can get rid of that fear that even if I do make a mistake why like having a presentation, no one will remember. And then the second thing you talked about was like you're just there to give value to the people, and you just focus on that. It makes you like forget every other thing that's ongoing. Thanks for sharing this insight, Dasha. There is so much I'm going to reflect on after this call. Now, when it comes to like having a presence on stage, right? You notice there are some people who like it differs presentation styles of people, but at the very end of the day, one thing that good public speakers have is the ability to like capture the audience. There's this stage presence they have. There is the way they kind of like sound and communicate to people that it is just so engaging as against people who almost seems like they memorize the script and just put it out there. It's not like they're communicating with people. I don't know if there's something that you've experienced in the past or techniques you would give to someone who wants to have that better stage presence?
This is a good question, but there is no simple answer because
Hmm.
actually so many things get into that. It's your voice,
Hmm.
it's the rate of your speech, it's the articulation and how your body language moves.
Yeah.
It's if your voice is shaking, if you actually grabbing the audience, are you keeping the eye contact with the audience or not? How are you moving on a stage? There's so many little components that can help to engage the audience better.
Yeah.
So do you have any specific aspect that maybe you want to focus on? Because I don't think that there is one cure or one tip that can actually resolve the whole public speaking problem and say why people are actually
Okay.
so engaging and the other ones are not.
Yeah. So one that comes to mind is when speaking, forgetting what I'm going to say. And that is because most times I kind of like memorize the script of what I want to say word for word. But there's certain other people I see, and when they are speaking, it's like they are talking to you, but see it, you know they have an outline. So I want to know how to be able to like engage people when speaking without having like they will just know that you memorize the script and like combating that forgetting that might occur. And if it happens, like what do I do?
This has come to the art of the storytelling. When you're telling the story, you want to be relatable. And when you're giving the speech, even though you're teaching something, you're presenting something, you
Yeah.
want people to understand you and relate to you. This is why you structure your speech as a story. And once it's more personal and more relatable, it's easier for you to remember your script. You don't need to remember it word to word. You need to remember the main storyline on what are you about
Yeah.
to say. So even if some things will shift and change and you can use different words from the script, the meaning is still there and the value that you're providing is still there. And when you're trying to create a really engaging story, the story usually should be quite condensed So you give them a beginning, why they need to care, and then the
Hmm.
story itself that should actually culminate about some action or some something that happened in your life, why you're telling this whole story, and then slowly go to the ending and what people should learn out of it. So normally you want to tailor your story around one action or one thing that you're trying to explain.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. I'll keep that. Tell them why they should care about what you're talking about, and then do justice to that. Very good point. So the next time I'm having a presentation, I need to keep this at the back of my mind, but it's just one thing that I constantly want to improve on. And I think one skill that have helped me in going engaging in debating. So like this form of debating I was introduced to like 2 years ago, the British parliamentary form of debate. And why this form of debate was so interesting is because you're given a debate topic 15 minutes to the time that you debate. Other types of debate you have maybe a day, like a week to prepare, but this one just 15 minutes at a time. And it could be on anything: international relations, economics, like literally anything. It could even be like fiction. And then you have to come on stage and then give a 7 minute speech on that. And so it forces you, because you can't like use the internet to like research the topic you're giving. It has to be what is up here and then draft it out. So what that kind of like forces you to like improve this aspect of like critical thinking, storytelling that we just talked about, but being able to like, would I use the word freestyle? But like, you know what you want to say, just about articulating it better to people. And that's like a good exercise to constantly improve your storytelling ability and critical thinking ability. So there's so much to unpack here. I want to go into
Yeah,
a deep,
debate is
yeah,
awesome. It's great thing. That's why I also recommend, and I started it recently,
yeah.
improv classes.
Hmm.
Improv classes are great for the same thing.
Ah, amazing. How do they work? Just a brief overview of how an improv class.
Improv classes, they are really interesting because every class is actually has a common theme, and
Yeah.
they are tailored to teach you some specific skills. So one class that I had recently was specifically we were playing different games, like super simple games,
Okay.
to engage people to look into each other's eyes, establish eye contact, and kind of connect when they are speaking and when they are saying something, because a lot of people actually struggle with keeping eye contact during the conversation.
Okay.
Another class was to generate quickly the random answer, something that comes to your head, and maybe create a story out of it. So it's to quickly connect your mouse and brain to generate ideas quickly, like you said, and similar to debates when
Yeah.
you just need to create something on a spot. And the improv classes are beautiful because the environment itself is a safe environment for you to fail. So if you're not, if you don't know what to say, if you stuck somewhere, it's okay. You don't know those people. They will see you for the first and maybe last time. It's fine. And everybody is super supportive. The improv class is an environment when every single time somebody's failing, it's actually not failing. We're really supportive. Everybody's cheering you up, and this is the environment where you learn. You can be anybody you want. And this is the beauty of it because it transforms you and you can experiment with your voice, experiment with your tone, experiment with your storytelling, and nobody will ever judge you.
Wow, beautiful. Still on this topic, why do you think it's important for everybody to like master good communication and public speaking? Are there any benefits to being great or at this skill?
I true believer that communication is the key to any relationships. It's your personal relationship at home with your friends, with your colleagues, and also it's help you to navigate and build through your career. Let's say
Yeah.
you're going to interview and on a paper you had such a great experience, you worked on many projects, but then you come to the interview and people are asking you questions and you cannot explain what you did or you don't have an answer, you freeze, you forget, you're just afraid of something. Maybe you're just not prepared. And even then, on the paper, you're perfect, you will not get a job. And
Yeah.
somebody who is just really good at speaking
Yeah.
and not as good on paper, they might get a job just because they are so engaging and afraid and not afraid. They are friendly and they build this rapport and connection with the interviewer. And then they're just talking their way through their career, their just promotions, and they just have a great relationship among the colleagues. They build the big network and they just communicate their way through. And this is works in a professional environment, and this works in a personal relationship. Who are the best guys who will be able to meet new girls? The guys who are not afraid. They will just come. Do you want a drink? You look beautiful. Uh, do you? Yes. Whatever pickup line, I'm not that good at it. But people who are not afraid to fail, they will just come and get a girl.
Absolutely.
Listen, they will come and get a job. So communication is the key.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now you mentioned this, I was going to go into this, but I saw a post you shared, and that was when you reflected on relationship between you and your partner. I think about 6 years now, and you shared in this amount of time you guys have been together, you can't really think of much of an argument that has come, and that was because you value communication. From that, it's almost like communication is not just a skill, like it's a lifestyle. And then
It is.
I want to go into this for a second. How can communication help a relationship between partners? Like, how can they communicate better? What are some things you do that has helped that your relationship thrive?
The main thing that we do when we have an issue, even when emotions are high,
Yeah,
we still are able to sit down and talk about it. And I can be frustrated at my husband, but I still think that instead of just shutting down and just walking away, it is important to address why am I frustrated or what is bothering me. And we can resolve things and move on, or we can just discuss it and I can understand his perspective.
yeah,
And instead of just shutting down and being upset inside, which is eating me inside, I would just express it, let it out of my chest, and then we would be able to have a healthy dialogue. Maybe not right away, maybe emotion needs to die down, but we still need to have the same day before we're going to sleep. Really important
yeah.
to have this healthy dialogue, resolve the problem, or at least listen to each other.
Mhm.
And once you listen, it's really important to listen and to be open because we all came from different environments. We all came from different families and we have different views on things. It's really important to be open to hear other people's opinion. And you might agree and disagree with it, but it's important to at least try to understand it. And once you understand it, you are able to actually move on and build on some common ground.
I agree. I agree. I just remember this, that there's a reason we have two ears and one mouth. And that's because we should listen more. But oftentimes, when disagreements come up between colleagues, partners, like everybody just wants to say their own part. Nobody's trying to understand where the other party is coming from. And if they're able to just do that, just listen and understand, then you come to find out that the path to resolving that issue is just close by. So it's like we need to learn to listen more. That's a beautiful point you also shared. And I'm also thinking there are people who, so let me be more specific now. There are families that, let's say the parents and let's say the kids, it's often difficult for them to like communicate better. Maybe one party is maybe not really open to communication. Maybe the way they communicate it almost seems like they are more or less more aggressive. And they just want to like break that barrier and like hear me out. Do you have any advice for dealing with situations like that?
I will tell you the story because I also came from the culture where we are really direct people. Well, Ukrainians, Russians were really straightforward and direct. We don't like to beat around the bush. We just want to get straightforward. Okay, let's resolve things.
Yeah.
And it's in a lot of cases interpreted as being like forceful or mean. And it's really important to understand your why when you come into difficult conversation. Doesn't matter which environment is it. What is your why? Do you want to build a relationship with the person you're talking to? Do you want to resolve the problem together? Or actually, do you want to force your opinion on somebody? It's also an option, but we need to actually acknowledge for ourselves that, okay, I don't care about your feeling. I just
Yeah.
want you to do what I said. This is the managers. Some bad
Absolutely.
bosses do that, but
Yeah.
we need to understand that this is the
Yeah.
way. But if your goal is to build a relationship and resolve the problem, or let's say in your example, you want to educate your kid, so your goal
Yeah.
is to make him, her listen, right? And you cannot do it by force. And once we understand our why and what is the mutual goal of this conversation, it naturally softens and goes in a better direction. Because
Yeah.
when we focus not on our emotions, but on actually why are we doing it,
Mm.
this is when the whole conversation shifts.
Wow. That's true. This question of why, I've come to see it translates into everything. So it's like we brought it down here now into why when it comes to like communicating, having like very difficult communication, like what's the why? And we've identified that why, we kind of like navigate the solutions around since we understand the problem. And still the same thing, like the first episode we talked about like productivity and life purpose. And our guest then talked about like you need to know your why. And because if you know your why in life, anything you do will just be in alignment with that. So I think it's just so important for us to keep asking this question why in every sphere of our life. Really beautiful insight we are getting from you, Dasha. I'm sure everyone listening to this can agree. During the start of our conversation, you shared how one of the things you noticed when you moved to the US that made you start this journey of sharing content online was the fact that you noticed that people find it difficult more or less to express themselves. They have great ideas, but there's just this difficulty in just being able to put themselves out there. And I've also noticed this. So, for example, students who might be listening to this, it might be that, let's say a question is asked in class by the lecturer and they know the answer, but they just don't want to put their hand up. People just like to avoid the spotlight. And personally, this is something I've experienced. And for some part, I think it comes from the aspect of like fear of judgment or maybe imposter syndrome. Is this something that you faced in the past, or what advice will you give to someone who fears putting themselves out there?
So let's talk about two separate things. Imposter syndrome we can cover as a next question. So in
Okay.
order to put yourself out there, it's a little bit similar to why you're afraid of public speaking and going onto stage. First of all, we're
Mm,
afraid of failure, right?
yeah.
We will be embarrassed if some say something wrong, which is
Yeah.
natural. We talked about that.
Yeah.
But another thing, what would be the worst part of you speaking up? So if you will ask that question, what will be the worst thing that will happen? What do you think?
Hmm. I don't know. Maybe. Actually,
You'll get dismissed? You'll get fired? Probably not.
no.
You will say something embarrassing? Nobody will remember.
Actually.
And if you will not express your thoughts or ask a question, what will happen? You will sit there without your answer. You will not be able to influence the process or change anything in the work environment. It will build your frustration at your company or at the environment that you are in. Because at the beginning, when you join your company, let's say, you like the work, you wanted to work there, and
Yeah.
all of the sudden, after a while, you're just not satisfied with certain things, but you never say anything. You would say it to
Yeah.
your colleague, but you will never express the thought
Yeah.
because you're afraid. But at the end of the day, does it hurt you more or the company? What will
Hmm.
be you kind of you don't know, you need to understand what will be the worst thing that will happen. It hurts you internally the more you hold back because nothing bad will happen if you actually will ask the question.
This is
Most
so true.
likely.
No, j- actually, nothing bad will happen because it's like you're in class for instance, and I'm using this specific because I'm a student, for instance, and then there's this question you just need clarification on, but then you just hold yourself back because maybe what other people think. But the truth is that most cases they are also looking for someone to still raise their hand and ask that question or like answer that. And you can't find out that we are all in this together. So you should not try to feel like we just talked about that people are thinking or looking at you. No, they care about themselves. That's just the truth. I remember when someone told me this is like if you take a group picture and you're also in that picture, who's the first person you look at? Right? It's most likely
Yourself.
yourself. And that's the same thing with other people, right? So they're just focused on themselves. And you should not think that everyone is focused on you. Far be it from that. So it's like when it comes to putting your hand out there in class, do that. When it comes to like the corporate space, maybe sharing an idea when a presentation is going, like do that. And now I'm also thinking this is on a personal individual level. It might be as a cooperative, right? As an organization, you've worked in various organizations and startups. What policies do you think that organizations, companies can start to like implement or like create a culture around that can help foster good communication all around since it directly impacts the community, the company rather?
This is a great question because this is something that I have in the company where I'm working at right now. We have the policy of speaking up. So they encourage, it's one of our slogans that we need to speak up your truth and speak up your mind.
Yeah.
And it still holds people back because they think that it will be bad image on them if they will say that they
Hmm.
don't like something. So in a corporate world, I think we need to train leaders and managers to be more open and receptive to feedback, to ask for feedback and make sure that they create safe environment for the employees to speak up. And once this environment is there, it's similar to like improv class. When the environment is there, it's so easy to speak up. And especially when it's in a group, did you notice that if one person will ask a question, all of the sudden everybody else like, oh, I have a question too, or I actually want to share a thought too, or I want to add on this thought. Once the first
Yeah.
person, just one, will start and speak, everybody will join. It's so hard to
Yeah.
be the first one, but the
Yeah.
courage is a muscle. You cannot just uh,
Hmm.
be born strong and be able to lift 100 pounds, right? You
Yeah.
practice and you build on the muscles every day going to the gym. And the same with the courage, same, yes, same with everything. It's just a
Everything.
skill that you kind of need to build on. And it's so important to not just listen to this podcast, which is great, that the great start. You need to take something, whatever you like, and practice just a little by little every day in order to improve and get better. Speak up in a
Beautiful.
smaller group, then increase it. Tell your friend, and maybe sometimes it's so hard to share with the friend. And then you share with two friends, and then in a smaller group, and then you are building this muscle, building this courage to be able to speak up in a way bigger, to bigger audience.
That's so true. That's so true. I remember some years ago, I find it difficult to talk to strangers. It was one of the most difficult thing ever. I'm like, how can I approach a stranger, right? That was something that was so difficult for me. And then I came across Tim Ferriss' book, The 4 Hour Work Week. And there was a chapter there where he talked about comfort challenges, like do things that scare you. I was like, what do you mean do things that scare you? So it's like you recommend like going to like a coffee shop and like negotiating a discount. That's so uncomfortable. You come on public and like you try to do like push-ups. I'm like, why would I do that? You talk to a stranger. But then I was like, let me just give this a try. I know what, Dasha, when I consistently did that, that fear just kind of like it went away because it was something I practiced like every day back then in school. Like I would just talk to one stranger and instead of like hi, hello, but over time like hey, how you doing? It just constantly improved, and that's the key thing. Like with practice, when you intentionally practice something, you're bound to see improvement. And it's like this whole saying that practice makes perfect. Like we know that's not really true because practice makes improvement. You can constantly get better and keep improving. So like keep practicing and practicing, and you always keep finding that new level to unlock. Really beautiful point you brought out here.
And in the
I
worst
want
case scenario, what you'll get? You'll get a free coffee. You'll go to a coffee shop that you don't know. You ask, is there a way I can get a free coffee if I maybe post about you on my social media and we'll share a picture right now? And they will say yes, and you'll get a free coffee. And if no, they probably will not see you again. Don't do it at your local coffee shop. Go downtown where you don't know anybody. And they will not see you and remember you anymore. It's fine.
life goes on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're gonna do that. We're gonna do that. There's something so fascinating about you when we get to know you more. Is the fact that you're a lifelong learner. You take a lot of courses, you take a lot, read a lot of books. Why is that so important? Like, why do you do that?
I personally need to have a confession. I'm addicted to courses, like specifically courses. I'm so bad. I'm finishing one, I'm starting the other, and it's a constant learning journey for me.
Yeah,
I think it's really important to keep growing, and growing is coming from learning more.
hmm.
Because communication, specifically, if you think about it, there is no ceiling to this.
Hmm.
And it's the same with a lot of things. And this is the skill that is always evergreen. You can always get better. There will always be some new technologies, new things to discover.
Absolutely.
And I find it really interesting. It just generates so many thoughts in your mind. It makes you curious. It makes you look into ways that you never looked at before. And why I prefer specifically courses, I really like the mentorship programs and I like people who can inspire you and lead and navigate the way for you to be a better version of you. Because we have so much information out there and we have everybody right now producing these classes, courses. We have so many podcasts and it's so hard to navigate through this information overload.
Yeah,
That's why when you have a mentor or like a class group where you can actually rely on some direction and somebody will guide you through the way with the good mentors, you actually
yeah.
get to do the progress way faster and you can reach your goals
Way faster.
way faster than you think. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. What are some of the top three courses that you think that everyone should go and get, or maybe specific topics that everyone should get a course and like learn on? What comes to mind?
This is it's really depend on the area you're at. Because I'm a really big fan of communication.
Mm-hmm.
I think people should improve communications just to improve your life.
Yeah,
And it can be course or it can be constant learning something every day. I love the technique you will watch one video per day, let's say on a YouTube or LinkedIn or whatever, or will you listen to one podcast? You take one thing out of that video or a podcast and you apply it and you practice. Because without practice, the consumption of information doesn't matter. We consume so much information every day from work, from social media, from books. But unless we apply what we learn, it's just a white noise. So I would the instead of three courses that you need to take, I would really recommend whatever you're learning and taking class, listening podcasts, reading the book. Take one thing, apply every day, just practice. And this is where you will actually get better and improve.
Beautifully well said. I'll keep that to mind. Thanks for sharing, Dasha. I have a fun segment I want to do. I'm going to say two words, and you have to choose between one another, mostly centered around communication, right? Are you ready?
Okay, let's try.
All right. So, do you prefer testing or talking?
Talking,
Okay. Public speaking or one on one conversations?
one on one conversations.
Okay. What? Let me ask, why so?
I think with one on one conversation is the first stepping stone in improving your communications. Public
Hmm.
speaking, you will need the skill if you are planning to be a keynote speaker, if you have important presentations, if you need to deliver the, let's say, your diploma and you are doing the speech. It's not that often in our lives for majority of the people when they need to deliver the public speaking,
I see.
but we have one-on-one conversations every day. And if
Hmm.
you master this one-on-one conversation, and you will be able to be good listener, good communicator, to be able to build a rapport and build connection, you will have amazing friend group. You will have amazing community around you, and you will probably be happy.
Beautifully well said. Happiness at the end. Insightful. So now, listening to podcasts or watching YouTube videos.
I don't know. I love both. I do both. I listen to podcasts when I'm driving,
Okay.
and I'm watching YouTube videos, like kind of one video a day. Like I recommend. I love watching something every day.
So which would it be?
Do I need to choose?
Okay, we'll give you the pass. All
I
right.
love both. Sorry.
Amazing. So what about reading books or audiobooks?
Audiobooks for
Nice.
me.
Do you prefer spontaneous adventures or carefully planned outings?
Spontaneous,
Nice. Formal communication or casual conversation?
casual conversations.
Amazing. Do you prefer giving feedback or receiving feedback?
Receiving feedback,
Nice. Do you prefer learning by doing or learning by observing?
learning by doing.
Nice. And finally, work from home or office environment?
It's another hard one. I miss office environment, but working from home gives so much flexibility, so I will still stick with working from home.
Nice, nice, nice. Amazing. Speaking of working, this is something I really wanted to ask you about because I noticed that you had more or less a switch in career from a QA engineer to like project management. Why that switch?
Oh, I will be honest, as we have such a beautiful conversation here, I'm getting bored. When I
Hmm.
learn everything kind of in the field that I wanted to learn and I kind of hit the ceiling, I'm getting bored. So I did so many different projects in my QA careers, and I worked on all variety of projects. And
Wow.
then my progression was to go to project management or to be full stack developer.
Wow.
Development was not that interesting. I liked human interactions more. So for in Ukraine, actually, to become a technical project manager after QA is a strong career path.
Hmm.
In the United States, it's not exactly because all project managers has BA degree. We have technical degrees in Ukraine. So it's a
Hmm.
little bit different, but I moved as a project manager to United States, and then my career progression took me to product adoption manager. This is what I'm doing now, and I do a lot of trainings.
Yeah.
And by doing that, I actually also realized that okay, think I'm done with project management. I
Hmm.
want to work with people more and I enjoy genuinely trainings and I want to do that more. This is how I slowly got into communication because this is the topic that was so such a big pain point for a lot of the colleagues, and I saw them struggling speaking up. So I really wanted to help genuinely, and I started learning how can I influence people and teach them how to communicate with more confidence.
And you're doing just that. Like your content, please. If you haven't checked her content, go to her page right now. We are going to link it at the end of this podcast. You'll see so good, so many good insights and nuggets we want to share. Thank you for doing this. Like we're learning so much from the information you're putting out there. It's really having an impact, generally speaking. Thanks once again. And as we gradually wrap
Thank
up
you,
our
Divine.
no, really. As we gradually wrap up our conversation, there's always this one question, right? And so the
Right.
question is, if you could give one piece of advice to anyone trying to communicate more effectively, whether in their career, relationship, or personal growth, what would it be?
I would say always have your why first.
Hmm,
Why you're doing this? What do you want as an outcome of this conversation, interaction, presentation? Once
amazing.
you have your why, it will help you to define the trajectory of this conversation.
Begin with the end in mind, the why. That's beautiful. We have a closing culture on this podcast where I get to ask my amazing guest what is one question they wish I had asked them during the conversation. So, if I was to ask you, what's one question you wish I had asked you? What would it be?
What would be the question that you would ask me?
Yes, you wish I had asked you.
This is something that we kind of forgot to talk. It's imposter syndrome. Yeah, this would
Hmm.
be the one that we didn't cover, and I actually wanted to talk about it a little bit.
The floor is yours. Let's talk about that.
I am an imposter. I had imposter syndrome that I'm not good enough to start even this communication journey. And every single time I'm going into some career progression, I'm thinking that I'm not good enough to do that. What helped me to overcome and just shifted my perspective completely on this imposter
Yeah.
syndrome is that we all are on a different levels. And when when I want to start a podcast, for example, I will need a mentor on a level two
Yeah.
because I'm on a level one. As I will start the questions, how are you starting? What are you doing? And maybe then when I'm moving on a level two, I will ask what equipment are you using actually? How are you streamlining? What platform is the best? And then slowly I will need always to ask the question to the next level. Because if I will ask a person who is doing podcasts for 5, 10 years, they don't remember how they started. They don't know all these little tips and tricks how to
Yeah.
improve. So we all have value to give. We all have information to give, we're just all on different levels. So I still, even though I don't have 10 years of experience studying communication, I have information to share that I'm learning every day, and I'm open to share my experience, share my insights on what I learn and what I use in my day-to-day life. I'm not on 1100, but I'm not on the level one. And this is where I understand that whatever we all have value to provide.
Wow.
And this is so important. Once you understand that, you just need to find people within your circle that you can share this information with. And I'm pretty sure it will be valuable.
Wow.
This is when you stop feeling that you're not good enough. You are
Wow.
enough because you're enough for your level. And this is perfectly fine.
Beautifully well said. You know, I experienced this for a very long time. You see, this conversation that we're having, I thought, like, who am I to have this conversation? Right? I'm nowhere. Like, I'm not any good to do this. And there was just this thought that just kept me from doing this and putting myself out there. But then I loved what you said. You have value to give. So recognize that you have value and then share it with those who are around you. That was so beautiful. It's almost the highlight here. No, really great information. Thanks, Asha. There's been so much that we've gone into. And if I was to put you on the spot right now to ask me a question, what would it be?
What will be your next thing that you would like to learn or improve?
Wow, this is such a good question. So right now, I I want to learn more about marketing. For some reason, it's something that fascinates me. Have dabbled across various fields in the past, but for some reason, marketing, because I started off like as a network marketer back then. I'll be like in junior secondary school. I'll be pitching to my teachers, oh, have you seen this product? It does this, it does this. And it was just something that I just had this love for. So right now I want to like take it a next notch, learn more about like marketing, SEO optimization. I'm currently building a startup. So it will also help me like pushing that product into the market. Thank you so much. So that's one.
Oh,
And
well, good
obviously
luck with that.
really appreciate it. Thank you. And then obviously communication and public speaking. And I'm going to stay tuned to your channel one page. And just on that, where can people reach out to you, your work, and what's next for you?
The easiest way right now to reach out with any questions, and I love questions because this is how I create more content,
Nice.
is LinkedIn. This will be my main platform to reach out to me for any consultation or just information or any questions that you have. I know that you have my LinkedIn and you can attach the link to the podcast. So this will be
Yeah.
the platform. What is next? Next, right now, I'm actually building the email newsletter that I will roll out soon. So I will start doing the newsletters and I will start doing more consultations and one-on-ones moving on.
Oh, beautiful. And how can someone book a one-on-one with you? Is this still via the LinkedIn? Is that a website? How?
It will be available on LinkedIn soon. I think
Beautiful.
February will wrap it up.
Beautiful. We're looking forward to being a part of that. It's been an absolute pleasure, Dasha. Thank you so much for your time and for being a part
Same
of
to
the
me. Thank
Intentional
you so much
Minds.
for having me.
Same here. Take care, Dasha.